The World's Greatest Friends, 3 Beloved Dog Stories, Tale 1, Fido, Borgo San Lorenzo, Italy, 1940s. In a small town called Borgo San Lorenzo in Tuscany, Italy, lived a humble kiln worker named Carlo Soriani. One cold, rainy night in 1941, Carlo was cycling home through deserted streets, still reeling from the impact of World War II bombings. A faint whimper reached his ears, stopping him mid-pedal. Investigating, he discovered a wounded stray puppy, likely injured by debris. Carlo, moved by pity, scooped the pup into his arms and brought him home. Naming the dog Fido, Latin for I trust or I am faithful, Carlo and his family nursed him back to health. Once recovered, Fido grew into a sleek, medium-sized dog with soulful brown eyes. A strong bond formed between the two, forged in the crucible of wartime hardship. When Carlo left for work at the kiln factory each day, Fido began following him to the bus stop. Day after day, as bombs sometimes fell in the distance, Fido waited until the bus pulled away. When evening came, the dog was back at the bus stop, eagerly watching for Carlo's return. Tail wagging, he'd spring forward as soon as he saw Carlo step off, greeting him with excited barks and licks. This routine continued for over 2 years. Neighbors watched with smiles at the dog's loyalty, occasionally giving him scraps of food. In late 1943, however, an Allied bombardment struck the area. Many factories were destroyed, and casualties were high. Carlo's factory was among those hit, and Carlo himself did not survive the bombing. That evening, Fido went to the bus stop as usual, sniffing the air expectantly. The bus arrived. Workers disembarked, weary from the day's labor, but Carlo was not among them. Confused, Fido lingered, circling the bus stop, waiting for the next bus, and the next. Eventually the dog trotted home, tail drooping. Yet the next day, Fido returned again, and the next. For days, weeks, months, Fido continued to go to the bus stop, hoping to see his friend walk off the bus again. War had displaced many, and the town was in ruins. Fido himself dodged rubble and picked his way through bombed-out streets, determined to fulfill the ritual he'd practiced when Carlo was alive. Word spread among the survivors. "That dog is still waiting for his master," they would say, shaking their heads sadly. Over time, the story reached local newspapers, and Fido became a beacon of hope and loyalty in a world scarred by devastation. Townspeople felt protective of Fido. They would feed him, shelter him, and ensure no harm came his way. As the war eventually drew to a close, the region began to rebuild, but Fido's vigil never ceased. In 1957, the mayor of Borgo San Lorenzo awarded Fido a gold medal for his faithfulness. Photographs show a modest ceremony, with local officials gathered around the dog. Fido, oblivious to the honors, merely looked anxiously at the road, ears perked, as if thinking, "Perhaps today Carlo will come." Despite the heartbreak of an endless wait, Fido's daily pilgrimage offered solace to many who had lost loved ones in the war. Fido kept his vigil at the bus stop for 14 years. In June 1958, he died. Local newspapers ran obituaries, lamenting the loss of a dog whose devotion reminded them of simpler times and enduring values. A monument was erected in Fido's honor in the town piazza, and even decades later, visitors who stumble upon the story are moved by the dog's simple, pure loyalty. In many ways, Fido's tale echoes Hachiko's, both dogs bridging the chasm between the living and the lost through unwavering love. Tale 2, Shep, Fort Benton, Montana, USA, 1930s-1940s. During the 1930s in the United States, Fort Benton, Montana, was a quiet town situated along the Missouri River. A train station served as a vital lifeline, bringing supplies and travelers across the vast plains. One day, a coffin arrived by train, and a small, shaggy-coated border collie was seen trotting behind the pallbearers. The coffin contained the remains of a sheep herder who had passed away, and the dog, later called Shep, had been his loyal companion. The coffin was shipped east, where the man's family lived, and Shep watched as it was loaded onto a train. After the train pulled away, Shep lingered. He paced around the station, whining softly, as if waiting for his master to come back. Station workers, noticing the forlorn dog, offered him food and water. Time passed, but Shep would not leave the station. Each day, he watched as trains came in, scanning the passengers for a glimpse of his departed friend. Locals tried to adopt him, but Shep always returned to the depot. The station master, a kindly figure often referred to as Ed, took pity on him, constructing a makeshift bed in a warm corner of the station. Shep, while grateful for the kindness, never truly seemed at ease anywhere but on the platform. Ears pricked when a train's whistle sounded in the distance. Ed recounted stories of Shep's behavior to travelers, and some wrote letters describing this dog's loyalty to newspapers back home. Gradually, Shep became famous throughout Montana and beyond. People would say, "If you stop in Fort Benton, you must look for Shep," as if he were as much a landmark as the river or the old fort. For nearly 6 years, Shep repeated his ritual. Through scorching summers and frigid Montana winters, he maintained his watch. As he aged, his muzzle gray, his steps slower, station workers ensured that he had medical attention if needed. Children would bring him scraps of meat, and traveling salesmen might pat his head for luck before catching their trains. But Shep never allowed himself to be taken too far from the station. It was as if he feared missing the train that might finally bring his master back. Tragically, on a cold winter day in 1942, Shep slipped on the icy rails. A coming train could not stop in time, and he was struck. News of Shep's death resonated across Montana. Telegrams of condolence poured into the station. People mourned as though they had lost a personal friend. The townsfolk buried Shep on a hill overlooking the depot. A simple wooden marker was placed there, and a more permanent monument followed. Even today, visitors to Fort Benton can find plaques and memorials honoring Shep, reminding them of the bond forged on that lonely platform. Tale 3. Waghya, Maharashtra, India, 17th century. The legend. In the annals of Indian history, Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj stands as one of the most revered warrior kings, the founder of the Maratha Empire in the 17th century. His exploits and strategies revolutionized guerrilla warfare in the subcontinent. Legends of Shivaji are numerous, and among them is the story of his faithful dog, Waghya, whose name means tiger in Marathi, referencing bravery or a fierce spirit. Although the historical documentation of Waghya's existence is less detailed than that of Hachiko, Greyfriars Bobby, or Shep, Waghya's tale has passed through generations of oral tradition and regional folklore in Maharashtra. It epitomizes the same theme of canine fidelity. Waghya was said to be a large, strong dog. Accounts differ on the breed, with some describing him as a native hound. He was known to accompany Shivaji on his travels and was present at many significant events. Certain ballads paint Waghya as fearless in battle, barking to warn of approaching enemies or guarding Shivaji's tent at night. The name Waghya, meaning tiger, carries a special significance because Shivaji's emblem was the royal seal depicting a tiger. This alignment of symbolism likely strengthened the legend, with the dog representing unwavering loyalty to Shivaji's cause and person. The most poignant part of Waghya's story revolves around Shivaji's death in 1680. When the great king passed away, his cremation took place at the Raigad fort, the capital of the Maratha Empire. The legend says Waghya, overcome by grief, leapt into the funeral pyre as Shivaji's body was being cremated, refusing to be separated even in death. Over time, a small memorial to Waghya took shape next to Shivaji's Samadhi memorial at Raigad. Today, visitors to the fort often hear the story of Waghya's ultimate sacrifice. Some historians question the literal truth of this event, but even as legend, it holds a powerful moral. The love and loyalty between a dog and his human can transcend even the fear of death.